that is how you essentially get paid to be you. And that to me is the holy grail of work, when you're expressing yourself and getting paid for it.
If you're looking for a good summer read, something that's hilarious and funny, that isn't a business book, but has some business lessons in it, well, you are going to love my guest on today's show. Before I dive into who it is, I want to introduce myself. I'm Tracy Matthews. I'm the Chief Visionary Officer of Flourish and Thrive Academy and the host of the Thrive by Design podcast. And I've helped over 8,500 different jewelry business owners over the last 10 or so years launch, grow, and scale successful 6, multiple 6, and 7-figure businesses using my methodology called the desired brand effect. Now, in addition to helping people make money and grow their business, I love making them laugh and entertaining them or bringing things that will entertain them today. So today on the show, I have my friend Laura Belgray, who's going to be talking about her brand new book, Tough Titties. You can pick up the book over at toughtittiesbook.com. She is a writer and an entrepreneur and a business owner and pretty epic at all things that she does. She's written in the past for MTV, for HBO, for Nickelodeon, and so many more TV shows. And today she is going to share a little bit more about her life lessons and add a little humor in there and tie it all back to some amazingness. So let's dive into today's episode. You are going to love it. I'm so excited to be here today with my good friend, Laura Belgray, to talk about one of the hot summer reads of 2023. Laura, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much, Tracy. I'm so happy to be here.
I am so excited to be here. And I miss you all the time because we used to hang out so much in New York. Now, we get Zooms and voice notes via text.
It's so sad. And I saw you posted something the other day on Instagram. I was about to comment on it, what a tease, because you had your geotag was New York, New York.
Yeah, I wasn't there, sadly.
You were not there. No, you weren't here.
I wasn't there. Yeah. So anyway, I'm excited to have Laura on the show because I got to kind of watch her while she was going through the process of pitching her book and her formulating the idea for this book. And it's just, I want to first of all congratulate you because you've been working on this thing for a long ass time. Although the stories have been in your head for your lifetime.
Yes, both of those things are true. You weren't really around for the year of struggle, I don't think.
Well, can we talk about that?
Moved. Yes, we could talk about that.
Okay, cool.
Can we talk about it yet?
Well, first of all, for people who don't know you, if you've been hiding under a rock and you don't know Laura Belgray, who is Laura Belgray? And tell us a little bit about your journey.
Who is Laura Belgray? Read the book. No,
this is true.
So yes, Tracy and I met through the online business world, or as I like to call it, the space, where I have been a copywriter and copywriting teacher, mentor, course creator, etc., for a good 13 years now, under the brand Talking Shrimp. And so I'm known for copywriting, but my larger umbrella mission, what I really do is help you, if you are an entrepreneur, solopreneur, jewelrypreneur, mommypreneur, anything entrepreneur, find the words and the chutzpah to make your business a total expression of your personality, because that is how you essentially get paid to be you. And that to me is the holy grail of work, when you're expressing yourself and getting paid for it. So,
which is so relevant for jewelry designers, right? Because they're always expressing themselves and getting paid for it, which is amazing.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Laura's been on the podcast, I think, a few times before talking about different things. So if you haven't heard one of her episodes, go to the blog or to my podcast and just search Laura Belgray, and all of those episodes will come up. She's such a wealth of information and so much insight on different things that she can teach you besides entertaining you this summer. So tell us a little bit about how you came up with the idea for your book.
Well, it was a really long process. It was a process of me just knowing I wanted to write these stories, maybe writing all the stories. I wrote a ton of material before I knew what it was. That was always the question that tortured me. What is this book? It's all these stories. And is there a theme here? There are many themes. There's the late bloomer theme. There's the just not doing life the way you're supposed to theme. There's the coming of age as a dork in New York theme, which the working title for it for a while was New Dork City. But I knew
that is such a good name.
It's like, didn't say it all. And it sounded too much like the whole thing took place in adolescence, which I suppose it does, if you like, considering my adolescence, I think went through like age 35 or maybe longer. But eventually, I think that the title hit me one day when I said something that I say all the time, which was tough titties. And because I'm 12 and is still channeling that 12-year-old me who would, you want me to do that? Tough titties. I'm not the way I'm supposed to be. Tough titties. So to me, it's the ultimate sorry, not sorry for not being the person you're supposed to be. And the full title is Tough Titties on Living Your Best Life When You're the Effing Worst. Or the working subtitle was Confessions of a Late Bloomer, but it sounded a little soft and bloomy and flowery. And I felt like this one really expressed it better. And because it's not a how-to, it's more of a how not to than a how-to. And I know nobody wants to be the worst, but aren't we all a little bit? Anyone I hang out with, anybody I like is a little bit the worst, or finds themselves saying, I'm so sorry, I'm the worst. Either we forget to text back, we're late, we say, yes, I'd love to get together when we really mean no. Let's not and say we did.
Should I take that personally when I don't when I don't see you? I'm kidding. When I'm in New York and you're like, oh, we should get together.
No, I always want to see you. You don't count. You're exempt.
It's the worst and the best. I haven't had a chance to read the entire book yet, but I've got to read through parts of it. And the reason why I enjoy Laura's company so much is because she is freaking hilarious. And she's a fantastic writer. Like, if you're not on her email list, just get on her email list, because even if you're not a copywriter, you don't want to buy a copywriting resources, and you don't need necessarily courses on how to communicate better about your business or your brand, which I think everyone listening to this podcast does. So get on her email list. They're just really entertaining. And she shows how you can create story-driven content that actually sells something that's completely unrelated, which I think is super helpful for social media, for a lot of other things that we have to do in our business to engage our audience, instead of, this is obviously a podcast for jewelry and product-based businesses, but you're always selling something. So you might as well use your stories to sell what you're selling instead of just talking about the product.
I so agree. And it's so often that we will buy a product because of the story behind it, or just we're sucked in by somebody's story. And then there's, a beautiful necklace. And we're like, I really like you. I love the story you just told. So I want your necklace.
Exactly. Yeah. So good. And we're also going to be doing like a little bonus for people who buy Laura's book, which we're going to announce after. I want to make sure we have the details right though before I announce it.
Yeah. Sounds good.
Okay, perfect. So the book title kind of came about like just working through it. What was the process of like getting your book deal and like pitching this book? Because it's kind of an unusual book for someone who's like an entrepreneur type, like business owner. Most people want to write a book that's about like their business so that they can make money from the book as a like front end of a marketing funnel, which I know is like your favorite thing to say. But you chose to write a memoir. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yes, exactly. I knew all along, this is not the book that I am supposed to write in my business, in the space. I'm supposed to write a copywriting book or a marketing book, the space, or a self-help book, personal development, any kind of how-to that has like bullet points at the end of each chapter and your next steps and what you just learned. And I refused. I really felt like I would rather eat a bag of hair than write that book. Maybe someday, but I had this book in me. I had these stories that I really wanted to tell, and I didn't want to try to wedge in a marketing lesson to each one. I just wanted to write about my life. And I was so inspired by authors like David Sedaris, Tina Fey. Did you ever read Bossy Pants?
Yes.
So good. And that was one of the first like nonfiction books that I couldn't put down, that I just didn't want to end. And it's like, I want to write a book like that, like funny stories that have a little bit of wisdom in them. I mean, I still remember some that she dropped in that book, like like from Lorne Michaels, like never hire someone you wouldn't want to run into at 2 a.m. by the printer. So I wanted to write something like that. And most of all, I wanted people to read it and laugh or feel better about their lives, or say, your book kept me up till 3 a.m. 4 nights in a row, or 4 a.m. 3 nights in a row, whatever configuration you want. I just wanted to keep people up and have them laugh and have them read it on a plane, like, can't wait to read this book. I'm saving it for vacation. That was what I wanted this book to do. And so, oh, you asked me about the process of writing it and getting the book deal.
Mhm.
So I started, like, I hit the ground in like writing in earnest, I'd say in like 2019. And that's when I was writing like with a direction, with, I am going to write this book. I'm going to write a proposal. I'm going to get a book deal. And I started working with someone who could help me with that, named Suzanne Kingsbury. She's amazing. So she helped me shape it and would tell, like, read all my material and was like, okay, I think you should, after we had talked a lot and we knew each other, she's like, I think you need to write this story and that story and add this one in and that one in. And once I had a whole lot of stuff together, she's like, okay, now we write the proposal. And so I wrote a proposal, shopped it to agents, got the usual rejections, and finally found somebody who said yes. We were like, are you free on Tuesday to talk? And I was
Oh,
like,
wow.
okay, this is an offer of representation. And so they took me on, and I made them promise, when they offered to represent me, I was like, I definitely want to go with you, especially because you made me an offer, and I decided I would say yes to any agent I asked who said yes to me. So, but I made them promise that they would not make me, or not go with anybody, not sell the book to anybody who wanted me to change it into that kind of book I didn't want to write. And that had happened to a friend of mine. She had gone out with a collection of essays that were fantastic and sold it to an editor. And then the editor pulled a bait and switch on her and said, okay, that's not the book you're writing. You're going to write a how-to, and it's going to be based on this talk that you gave. And then, it became a totally different kind of book, self-help business book.
And then you're not inspired, right? Yeah.
Right. I mean, she was able to get inspired, and she was trying to convince me, like, self-help books are where it's at. You should write one, you should just go with it and write one. And I just didn't want to. So my agents shopped it around and said, block off these 3 days in October for meetings with editors, publishers. And so I did. And I was like, are these days filling up? Should I keep them blocked? They're like, yeah, keep them blocked. And then they're like, we have one meeting at, on Thursday at 2 p.m. And I was like, what? That's it? Are the others still coming in? Or they're like, no, that's it. We have this one meeting. And they're like, a lot of people were interested and loved your writing, but they asked if you'd be willing to write a marketing book or a self-help or how-to. And
Stop.
yeah. And so, my stubbornness, which I'm glad for, I got a good advance, but it wasn't a 6-figure advance. Nor was it a multiple six-figure advance or $1 million advance, which wasn't any one
For
of
your
those.
first book, that's ambitious.
You know what? I know people who've done it. That's because they were approached, like, will you write this book? Yes, I'll write this book. So it cost me in that sense, but I got to write the kind of book that I wanted to write. And I'm very happy that I stuck to my guns on it.
That is so fun because the stories are so good. So you mentioned earlier Tina Fey and David Sedaris. Like, when I first heard about the book concept and then got to preview, the advanced copy or whatever manuscript, I was like, this reminds me so much of David Sedaris. Have you read all of his books?
Oh, thank you. That's the highest compliment ever.
He is
I have not read
he was my
all his
favorite
books
for so long. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
Absolutely. No, mine too. And his was the very first book of essays I ever read, like that kind of writing. Let me know. Oh, you can write like that. You can write stories about your life, and they don't have to be one long story. which made it feel doable. And I just loved it. So Me Talk Pretty One Day was my favorite.
Oh my God.
And First One, I feel like you never forget your first David Sedaris book is, I think, always the best. And yeah, that one was so good. And I've read several of his others, and I think Carnival of Snackery. Is that the one? I forget. I read a recent one of his, like did it through Audible, and it's a great listen, because he goes back and forth between reading from it, and some are read in front of an audience, which I love even more.
That's amazing. I saw him at Lincoln Center a couple years back.
You did?
Yeah.
So jealous. Well, I'm going in May. I'm going to see him in Brooklyn. Yeah, in May.
Okay, awesome.
And I'm very excited about it.
Yeah, it was cool. I'm like, I didn't know like authors like David Sedaris just go hang out in Lincoln Center, but like one of my friends invited me. I'm like, I love him. Like literally
so good.
Him. So good.
Yes.
Hilarious. And I hope you're the female David Sedaris for our
Thank you for our generation. The straight Jewish David Sedaris.
Yeah, exactly.
The straight Jewish female David Sedaris. I will take that.
That's so good. Okay, so let's go back to the book content. Like, what's your favorite story or chapter that you wrote?
I think it's hard to choose a child, but I would have to say my favorite one is called Self-Help Night Near the Midtown Tunnel. And that is about my year and a half in what I cannot legally call a cult, a self-help cult. It was a self-help group that was pretty icky in many ways and not my scene at all. And yet I stayed. A friend brought me, a friend we will call Gina. She's called Gina in the book. And she brought me in, like she had been talking about it for several years that I'd known her for, and it never appealed to me. She would talk about this workshop thing that she went to, or this couple that she was learning from on Monday nights, and she went on their retreats. And I was never that interested until I was kind of in a rut it was like the year after I got married. I was in sort of a post-wedding rut and a creative rut, where like the excitement of the wedding, of planning the wedding, and you're done writing your thank you notes and that's all over. And it's like, now what? What's the big thing in my life now? Work was feeling a little plateau-ish, and I still hadn't found my thing. I really wanted to find my thing. So she called me out of the blue. We had fallen out of touch, and was like, hey, do you want to come to this thing with me on Monday night? And it felt so fortuitous and kind of intuitive and witchy of her that she sensed I needed something in my life. And it turns out that their whole thing is recruiting people. Like they pressure you constantly in this thing to recruit people to what they call sharing transformation.
I think I know what group it is.
I think you do. Do you? Do you know?
I mean, I've never been, but I've heard of people talking about it forever.
And so it is not Landmark.
It's not. That's what I thought it was.
It's not. Yes, it is it shares DNA with Landmark.
Okay.
Landmark comes
adjacent.
from Est. It's Landmark adjacent. It is. It's like a satellite of Landmark, like kind of a pathetic satellite of Landmark, where their attendance was always stuck at 72 people. I don't know why. They could not get past that hump. And every week they would tell people, the more you share it, the better it works. And they would berate people who weren't sharing it. And they would say, you haven't been sharing it. You've lost your aliveness. You've lost your passion for life. And I stayed in this, just waiting for it to kick in, kind of waiting to discover my thing. I wanted to figure out, like, what is that career? What is that? How am I going to tap my talent in that way that makes me tens of millions of dollars? And I was just waiting for that. I kept waiting for that to appear. And I thought that they would show it to me somehow. And I was also trying to figure out, when I joined, I was trying to figure out whether I should have kids. And so I was at a stuck point then too. I was on the fence and couldn't figure it out. Like, I was wanting to want them, but I didn't want them. I just wanted to want them, and was waiting for that to kick in, or just to feel like, to arrive at a yes or a hard no. And
Yeah.
so those two things, I felt like those two questions were following me down the street.
And you
It was
didn't
like
get an
the
answer.
pebble in my shoe. I did not get an answer. Definitely didn't get an answer. And it was very much not for me. But in the chapter, I talk about all the the things that they did to people there when you got up to talk. There was one woman who got up to talk, and she was like, I'm really stressed about my job, about this project at work. And they're like, I don't think you're stressed about the project. She's like, oh, I'm not. Like, no, we think you're stressed because of your wobbly chin. And she was like, what? And they're
What?
like, yeah, how your chin wobbles when you stand there. You're thinking about, your attention is on your chin
Wait,
instead
what?
of on it. Yeah. And she was like, yeah, she had like a little bit of a fleshy face. I don't think she ever mentioned her chin.
That is the
So
most terrible thing to
that
say.
was terrible. It was awful. There were
Oh
so
my
many
God.
things like that. And yet I signed up to go on a retreat with them in Costa Rica, and found myself fake yelling "Pura vida" the whole time, and doing terrible exercises like standing in my, we had to stand in our bathing suits for a silent 30 minutes in front of the other half of the group while they stared at us. And
Really?
it was an exercise in, quote, being seen.
That's awkward.
It was awkward. There's a lot of awkwardness to it. And I was never in danger. It wasn't a sex cult like The Vow, like Nexium,
Oh yeah.
or anything like that, though we had to
I saw
listen
that
to
on
the
the plane.
leaders.
Yeah.
Yes. So it wasn't quite like that. And we did have to listen to the leaders of it talk about their sex life a lot, but
Oh,
other than that, no one forced
interesting.
you. No one forced you to have sex with them. But yeah, I would say that was my favorite chapter to write, because I remembered every detail so well, and it was just a fun release to get to make fun of these people at long last on the page.
How did you select the stories that you wanted to include? Because you have so many stories.
Yeah, I think I went with certain themes of trying to fit in, not fitting in, going against the grain, and being like cringy, awkward stories, and also stories of being a late bloomer and trying to find my thing. And so anything that went along with the tough titties theme, like tough titties, I'm not the person I'm supposed to be. Like, you want me to drive a car, you want me to learn to roast a chicken, you want me to have kids, tough titties. I'm not doing any of those things. So anything that fit with that.
Where did roasted
Yeah.
chicken come in? Is that one of the
No,
chapters?
no, roasted chicken is not one of the chapters, but I do mention that I don't cook, and that I found a partner, my husband Steven, who he cooks, he cleans, he decorates, and yet he's straight. And
He is a
he
great
does
cook, I
all of
have
the
to
things.
say. I've had his
Yeah,
meals before. They're delicious.
he is a great cook. He is. And that's another chapter of it that I love. Is a chapter called How I Met My Husband, and the way we met, like the way I met and came to be a couple, fall in love with the one, what goes against all dating advice ever written. Which is generally like, make room in
Get
your
out your
life
list.
for love. We were both in bad relationships when we met, and those overlapped with our courtship, and say,
Whoops.
which you're not supposed to do. It wasn't necessarily the most evolved way to fall in love, but my partner, the person I was with, deserved it, even if his didn't. He was a lying, cheating, narcissistic, pathological, married salsa instructor who I was with. That's another great chapter, I think,
Yeah.
which is called He's Never Going to Leave Her. And he wasn't. So
Yep.
yeah,
But you learned salsa.
I learned salsa. I could dance like a mofo by the end of that relationship.
And you're a great dancer. Did SIBO make it in?
SIBO did not make it in. I did have to cut stuff. I think that would be for the next book. SIBO is the house dance teacher whose class I went to religiously in the before times. And Tracy, you came too
Yes, so
with
fun.
me a couple of times.
A couple of
right?
times.
Yeah.
I was so intimidated, but it was very fun.
That's so good.
So good. Okay. I just want to ask you one more question about the chapters because I did glance over this one about you being a late bloomer. Do you want to talk about that?
Well, I don't know which one you're talking about in particular, because so many of them are about being a late bloomer. Oh, would it be the titular
Yes, the
chapter?
titular chapter.
Which is
Since
titular
it's
chapter,
tough
meaning
titties,
it's
we might
tough
as well talk
titties.
about boobs.
Yes, yes.
Sorry, guys.
So as a late bloomer in just about every sense, but especially in developing as a tween and teen, I was pretty happily flat chested until I turned 22, really. And
Crazy.
I think it was a summer of or winter of too much tasty delight, and I just put on some weight, and so much of the weight went to my boobs, and I went from a nice little B cup to at least a double D overnight,
Oh my
seemingly.
gosh.
And at first they were fun because at first they were really perky, and they just came in and I could walk around with no bra, and people thought they were fake because they stood up straight out, zero scaffolding required. And then they just got bigger and bigger and became a public topic. And so the chapter is about having an enormous set of jugs that everybody felt was public property to talk about. Like when I went out for a run, I'd have to strap them into two sports bras, and even that didn't work. And construction workers would, of course, hoot and holler. And I remember one guy who was just a big chubster himself, kind of fake jogging next to me with his hands in front of his chest, bouncing they were he was kind of miming fake tits, and he's like, "Bounce, baby, bounce."
Oh my gosh, seriously?
Oh yeah. And guys would come up to me in bars and say, "Excuse me, my friends and I have a bet, are you a D cup?" So eventually it occurred to me, maybe I'll get a breast reduction. And then I started looking into it. I couldn't really Google them then. It was, it was the 90s. There wasn't much to Google. I think I probably used Dogpile, which was the server, the search engine back then. And became obsessed with getting a breast reduction, and found a doctor and got one, and was so happy. And then they grew back, because it turns out I am part starfish. So I got a second one. About 7 years apart. Yeah, believe it or not. So I've had 2 breast reductions. If anyone wants to talk about breast reductions, I'm very experienced, doubly.
So why do you think this is the best summer read for people to read in 2023?
Well, I would say because it is, if I do say so, the writing is compelling. There is an arc to it. So you do want to see where it's going, what is going to happen to this person. Is she going to find her thing? Is she going to ever find love, or grow up, become an actual adult? And spoiler, not really, but to the adult part of it. And I feel like it is what I wrote the book that I would want to read. It is well written, easy reading. That's what I always want.
It's so good.
It's we're skipping over the dirtiest parts, but it's got some. And by the way, if you're a prude, don't read it, because there's a chapter that in the dedication, I warn my mother not to read. She did, but my husband skipped it, because he's like, there's some things you just can't unsee, and I don't want to see them.
Yep, exactly.
So he skipped that. He skipped 2 chapters, actually, the ones that you wouldn't want to read if you're a prude.
Is Stephen a prude?
No, he's not, but
he's
he just
your
doesn't
husband.
want to know. He doesn't want to know certain things about his wife.
Yeah.
And some of them are with the guy he overlapped with, the married cheating salsa instructor. Yeah. And it's a little graphic.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
We're intrigued. So where can everyone find your book?
go to toughtittiesbook.com. Don't just type in toughtitties.com. Who knows where that will
Yeah,
lead.
we don't want to
Tough
know.
Titties, no,
OnlyFans
Tough
page.
Titties book. OnlyFans, my OnlyFans. Toughtittiesbook.com, and there are bonuses there. If you buy one copy, you will get the intro chapter, and I'm going to add more bonuses, which you'll get later on, even if you pre-order right now. Actually, this will be released at a time that there are probably more than one bonus for one book, but you buy multiple copies, and I've got incredible bonuses, including some writing training that's going to be coming up live, and a storytelling training and called Story Goldmine Live.
So good.
Which is going to be really fun. And it pairs with a freebie that I have, you could download now, which is called Story Goldmine, and it's 63 surprising places to mine your everyday life for stories that sell. And so
Awesome.
I'm doing a workshop version of that. That's going to be great.
Amazing. And we're going to be doing a promo with our community. So I'm going to be doing a book buy for my students, and I'm really excited about that. And we're going to be doing just some fun stuff. I'm really excited for you, Laura. Like,
thank you.
I am so excited for everyone to read this book because we all need a good laugh. I mean, I just think you're the most hilarious person anyway. So I will read and listen and to all your stories forever.
Thank you so much. And, I will point out, even though it is not a how-to, it's not a self-help book or any of those things, it is what somebody called edifying. It does build you up and give you some wisdom and inspiration. I think if you've ever felt behind in your life or your career, it's going to make you feel a lot better. If you feel like you could use a little permission to be more of yourself, it will give you that. Or if you ever feel like you are the effing worst, it will make you feel just fine about that, like you are not alone, because you've got me and we can just sit together.
Exactly. Thanks, Laura.
Thank you, Tracy.
I hope you enjoyed this episode today, and hope you pick up Tough Titties. It is an amazing book. Head on over to toughtittiesbook.com and pick it up and enjoy your fun summer read. All right, this is Tracy signing off. Until next time.